Great to have your company. This is Never Heard That, and my name is Andrew Mukey. Today's feature track is called Transient by the Australian band Machinations from their 1983 album Esteem. I've mentioned in shows past about how I used to tape my local community radio station 2XX when growing up in Canberra, and how it gave me the chance to hear so much new music. This is how I got to hear of the Machinations. Over a month or two I heard a few songs from the band and was really impressed by each song, today's feature track being one of them. Some would label the band's style as synth pop, but I feel that at this point of their career that is doing them a great injustice. The songs were driven by a drum machine, but the skill of the musicianship being displayed on the guitar, bass and keyboards set them above many of their contemporaries both in Australia and overseas. I quickly came to the conclusion that I needed to get my hands on their album, and was lucky enough to have it bought for me by my parents. A bit of a one-off, but I had just experienced a severe sports injury and this was a little something to help me get by. And it sure did that. Still to this day I consider it one of the best albums by an Australian band. In terms of playfulness, positivity, originality and just mighty fine musicianship, it is a shining beacon. I was well underage when I used a deep voice and presented myself at the university bar to go and see them play live in 1983. I got in, and it isn't just nostalgia which makes me recall that evening so very, very fondly. As a band, they had been non-stop touring since their formation in 1980, and they were really on fire. What made it an extraordinary experience for me goes back to these recordings I would do of 2XX. My only ever complaint about them would be often the announcers would forget to back announce what songs they had played. There was this one track that I'd fallen in love with earlier that I accepted I would never discover who the actual artist was. At about halfway through this live experience, the Machinations started to play this very song. Far out, it was their song. I don't think I've jumped up and down so hard in my whole life before or since. That track, by the way, was called Average Inadequacy. Try and stop yourself moving to that one as it plays itself out. They followed up Esteem with a single called Jumping the Gap. At the very least, this showed that bass player Nick Swan was seriously world class. Not surprisingly to me, there were many in the industry, both locally and internationally, who could see greater fame and fortune for the band. The album Big Music followed in 1985, and final album Uptown being released in 1988. Most people who know the Machinations will be based around this period, as this is when they started to get some mainstream support. For me, this period is when I felt the band would lead away from what made them so wonderfully unique and special. But such is life. I would like to say it once more though, the Machinations in the early 1980s was a band at the top of its game and as good as any in the world, a band all Australians should be proud of. As a taste, here is the song Transient by the Machinations from their 1983 album Esteem.
certain, much about